Welcome to the first episode of Throttles Bottles, a show about rides, risks, and the people bold enough to do both. I'm your host, Brad Miller, and I'm joined today by Rey Sotelo. Rey is one of the most influential people in the custom motorcycle scene, not just in California, but across the United States and around the world. Rey has built custom motorcycles for people like Joe Montana and Arnold Schwarzenegger. In the 1990s, Rey was one of the people responsible for the resurgence of Indian motorcycle and served as the president of the company for multiple years. He now owns and operates Indian Motorcycle of Hollister, California, where he continues that legacy. I'm honored to have him as my first guest. Rey, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Let's get the bottle open and see where the road takes us.
Let's go.
Before we get too deep into the episode, I want to say a quick thanks to one of our sponsors for today's episode, Holman Ranch Winery. They graciously provided the bottle that we will be drinking today, which is a bottle of their 2023 Three Sisters Pinot Noir. It's probably my favorite Pinot right now, and I'm really excited to share it with you. And you told me you enjoy Pinot, which is why I picked this bottle. Is that just personal preference? Do you have a story behind that, or?
I like the Pinots. I was introduced about 10 years ago at my golf club. They were doing a pairing, and it was a Silver Oak. Not to demean anybody's capacity for making wine. And I'm just not a cab fan. And they brought this to me out, and it was a Pinot, and I just fell in love with it. It's been my go-to, so I really enjoy Pinots. I like to try them all.
Awesome.
So I'm excited to try this one.
Yeah, I'm excited to show it to you. So now that we've got something in our glass, let's go back to the beginning. What is your first memory of a motorcycle?
Oh God, I was probably 9, 10 years old. I begged my dad for a mini bike, so I had to have the mini bike. A lot of my buddies on the street grew up in a very multicultural neighborhood, and a lot of the kids had mini bikes. I wanted one, so he got me this little 5 horsepower Briggs & Stratton, and we used to take it down to the school down the street, and I would ride this thing, and in a neighborhood, 10 years old, supposed to be riding out on the grass field or whatever, and I got bold one day after having the bike for about a week. I got bold, rode it on the street, and sheriff pulled me over and escorted me home.
At 10 years old?
10 years old, got
That's
my first
awesome.
and I actually got a ticket. They wrote me a ticket. I had to go appear in court, and it was a pretty traumatizing ordeal. My dad was not happy. My mom was livid, and I think that started it all.
Yeah, set you on the right path early on.
Absolutely.
Now, I know I briefly introduced you earlier, but I wanted to provide a little bit of information for people that may not know your story. At just 21, so 11 years later, after you got pulled over the first time, you opened your first motorcycle accessory shop. You then went on to build South County Motorcycles and later founded California Motorcycle Company in the 90s. Who inspired you early on or gave you your first shot?
Well, the motorcycle thing is, you either love it or you don't, and I think at an early age, I was probably in middle school, 69, and Easy Riders come out. So you're on TV watching the trailers, right? And I'm enthralled with, Peter Fonda, Dennis Hopper on these choppers, and the Harleys. Two of my neighbors, they were much older than me. I'm 13 years old, and they're in their 20s, and they both had Harleys. So I used to wait on the corner. My buddy James and we used to sit on the corner and watch these guys come home at 3:30, 4 o'clock every day, just so we could see the bikes. And then as we got older, the boys would invite us over to go hang out in the garage and stuff. And I just knew I was going to have a motorcycle, and at 16, I had at 15, I think we got permits at 15, James and we bought 450 Hondas, and we extended the forks and put ape hangers on them, and then the first Harley that goes by blows you off. You're like, oh, this is not good. We don't look as cool as those guys, right? So at 16, one of my sister's girlfriends was getting married, and the husband-to-be had a 53 Harley Panhead with a 21-inch over Springer front end, a little Sportster peanut tank on it. And I saw this bike, and I said, I gotta have it. And back then, I think I paid $1,600 for this thing, but we're talking 72, 73. That's a lot of money. I was about $600 short, begged my mother for the money. She loaned it to me against her better judgment. I bought this bike and then had to figure out how to start it. And my dad was not a motorcycle guy, but he knew mechanics, he knew motors, and I'd get home from school and want to ride the bike. I'd have to wait for him to get home from work to kickstart the thing, because I didn't have enough bricks in my pocket to get this thing kicked over and started. So that went on for a couple of months till I learned how to start it. So that kind of started the whole journey.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Tell me about your first build. How did it go? I know you talked about the 53 panhead, but
You know, I was working for Intel at the time, and I'm wearing a shirt and double knits and riding my Harley to work, and we're in the 70s, and I'm in the electronics business, and I'm working in the production end of Intel, and Intel was very fresh. I was one of the, probably the first 200-300 employees, and I just kind of didn't fit. I wasn't fit for the office. I loved the motorcycle, and I would tinker in the garage. And I was living down south of San Jose in Morgan Hill, and I had a garage. And when I moved down there, I was 19 years old when I moved down there. And I'm working for Intel. I'm on weekends, I'd go into town, ride the bike. I started meeting guys on Harleys, and all these guys were much older than me. And one thing led to another. They found out I had a little mechanical ability. And so, I'm changing the oil, changing the tire, doing this kind of stuff in my garage. And a guy brought me a Sportster. It had the Sportster tank, front fender, rear fender. And he says, "Hey, can you paint this?" I said, "Yeah, of course I can paint this." I didn't have a clue how to paint anything. Okay, not using a spray can, a paintbrush, whatever.
you can't say no.
Yeah, can't say no. So I went and bought a compressor, bought a spray gun, and bought the paint. And after about a month of trial and error, I finally got the darn thing done, and it came out pretty good. And for back in the day, and I think I charged the guy $200 to do this, which was a lot of money back then. And I probably made about 10 cents an hour doing it because I had to learn how to do it. And that kind of started the journey. That just started it, and one thing led to another.
Do you remember what color?
Black and red. Black with red scallops, because the scallops were easy to do.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I know you mentioned Easy Rider earlier, and I didn't want to jump into it too quickly, but you've told me a couple crazy stories about some people you've built bikes for, from athletes to musicians, other celebrities, and that's kind of how the idea for this whole series came about. I think you were telling me a story about building a bike for a member of Aerosmith, which was crazy. But what are some notable bikes or projects that stand out looking back?
In the early days, I'm running I started as a parts shop, and then I knew that I couldn't make it doing parts. I quit my job. I actually got laid off at Intel. They wanted me to commute. I was already in Mountain View. They wanted me to commute to like San Francisco. I said, I'm not doing that. So my wife at the time was making decent money, could support us both, and I just said, I'm going to keep working on bikes in my garage. One thing led to another. I opened a little shop. I couldn't do service. I was servicing bikes at a buddy of mine's house right around the corner from the shop. And as the business started growing, more people started finding out about us. There wasn't, you had the Harley dealer in San Jose, the Harley dealer in Salinas, and basically I was working on Harleys. And the guys got tired of spending all the money, at the dealership, so they started coming. They found out that I had ability and could work on their bikes. And then, slowly but surely, I started hiring guys, started building the team. And it was in the early 90s that we got such a reputation for building just kind of not custom bikes, but building bikes, because Harley couldn't keep up with the demand. So I'm buying motors and frames, and we're putting stuff together and selling these bikes, and making a living, making a good living. And one thing leads to another. I branch off and kind of start manufacturing these things just as special constructions. These guys were approaching me. I had a guy in Florida, I had a guy in Australia, I had a guy in London, had another guy in Arizona. I think I had five guys I was building bikes for. So I'd build 5 at a time, we'd ship them, put their name on them. One guy was Ultra Customs, the other guy was Steel Stallion, one guy was Bulldog Cycles. These guys all had visions of grandeur, didn't either have the capital or the wherewithal to build the bikes. I'm building bikes, putting their name on them, they're putting my name on the check, everybody's happy, right? Well, the feds cracked down on us. We could only build 1 special construction or 2 special constructions a year. And I think this was probably in 90, 91, something like that. And it kind of cramped what we were doing. So now I couldn't build bikes anymore, so I had to go get legal. So we went out, and at the time it probably cost me about 40 grand to get the certifications, Fed certifications and CARB certifications here in California to build the product. The only problem was I had 5 guys that were supporting me. Each individual brand had to be certified, and it was $40,000 a brand. I didn't have 200 grand to go get this done, so I started California Motorcycle Company. These guys kept buying our bikes. and I was still putting their name on them, but it was the CMC, California Motorcycle Company. And prior to that, there had been no other American motorcycle company since 1953 when Indian went out of business. And we were in the Kelly Blue Book in 1992, 93, 94. And I think it was in 94, one of the guys working for me, Bill Garcia, was at a blues club in San Jose, and this big guy walks in, obvious football player, and he sees Billy's bike out in the parking lot. And he walks up to Bill, "Is that your bike?" And this guy's, this is Ralph Tam. He's an offensive lineman for the 49ers. He was on the 94 Super Bowl team. And I wasn't big into football. I really didn't watch football or play football or nothing, but you know the names. And I didn't know this guy. He'd been on the team for a while, and him and Billy got to be buddies. Billy invites him down, and this guy wants a bike built, but he wants his bike built. This guy's 6'5", 6'6", he's a big dude. He's not gonna fit on a stock Softail or something. So we had to, stretch the frame, higher bars, he wanted a big motor. So we really, really customized this thing for him. He gets the bike, he's thrilled. What I didn't know about ball players at the time is, I'm talking ball players, basketball, baseball, football, soccer, all these athletes know each other. When the off seasons, these guys, they have friendships, and I didn't really realize that. So Ralph started bringing all of his buddies. He brings Eric Davis. Eric Davis was a defensive tight end or something. And he brings Eric Wright. Eric Wright, four-time Super Bowler for the Niners. So I meet Eric. Then he brings Keena Turner. Keena Turner, four-time Super Bowler for the 49ers. So I'm getting educated at the same time, and these guys want custom bikes. And they're big dudes. So we got known as building the big boy bikes. And one thing leads to another. And next thing you know, Ralph was like our spokesperson. I don't think at the time, but I think he was for a long time president of the Players Union. So he knew all the players. So he brings me to this guy, and he says, this guy wants a motorcycle built, and I don't know if you know him or not, Dusty Baker. Like, well, who doesn't know Dusty Baker? I'm a baseball fan, and Dusty was coaching for the Giants at the time. So, and Dusty was just a pure gentleman. So I build a bike for Dusty. Dusty brings me Charlie Hayes. He played for the Giants. Ralph brings me Joe Montana, brings me Dwayne Board, Pee Wee Board from the Niners, and then Ross Verba, Dave Kabruski, Green Bay Packers, Will Shields, Kansas City Chiefs, Rich Gannon, Kansas City Chiefs, Raiders. I'm a diehard Raider fan. And I get to build bikes for all these guys. So the word started spreading, and the next thing you know, we're all over the magazines. The endemic magazine at the time was Easy Riders. Frank Keisler and Dave, Frank Keisler was the first editor, and him and I got to be real good buddies, and Dave Nichols. And it was kind of a trade-off. I didn't have a marketing budget. So I'd call Dave Nichols and say, hey, you want to do an interview with Dusty Baker? What? Well, I just finished his bike. Oh yeah, we'll do that, So they'd photograph the bike, they'd do an interview with Dusty. Didn't cost them anything, didn't cost me anything. Dusty got to be in the magazines, so did we. Built by California Motorcycles, And this went on and on and on, probably for at least 10, 12 years. And then it went, the athletes, they know all the actors. So one by one, they started coming. And I think it was in 97, 98, Branscombe Richmond, character actor, he's been in a million movies. If you see him, you know him. He looks like a big Indian Samoan guy. I meet him at the 97 Love Ride, and he approached me, and him and I hit it off, and he becomes the spokesperson for California Motorcycle Company. Well, he started bringing me all his celebrity buddies to build bikes for. Grizzly Adams, Dan Haggerty. He brings me Arnold Schwarzenegger. He wasn't the governor then. He's just a Terminator. And I start building bikes for all these celebs. And one of the guys that found us was Peter Fonda. Peter has this idea. Now we're going into, Indian is buying me out. We're going into 99, and it was in mid 98. Some guy, one of Peter's guy's name was Randy White. I don't know how they were affiliated, had the business together. They want to build and recreate the Captain America bike that was used in the '69 movie, Easy Riders. Well, we're coming up on 1999, 30th anniversary. So they approached my brother. My brother calls me. I'm telling him, you're crazy. I said, who would do that? Well, Peter. Peter wants to do this. I said, if this is real, have Peter come up and meet me. Well, Peter came up and met me. We ink a deal, and I start building these Captain America bikes, building the Billy bike. He signs every one of them, signs a helmet. He goes out with a certificate of authenticity. Every bike was numbered, and these things are flying. I can't build them quick enough. And Peter becomes a spokesman for the company. During that transition, Indian buys my company. So Peter stayed on with the company, Branscombe stayed on with the company, and these guys were bringing all their celebrity buddies. Kelsey Grammer from Fraser, I built a bike for Kelsey. The list goes on and on and on. The guys, George Clooney built 5 for George. Carl Malone played for the Utah Jazz, built 5 for Carl. Once these guys got a bike, then the production manager, the PR manager, all his buddies, all their entourage had to have our bikes, and every one of them was custom. At the time that Indian bought me out, we were building about 1,800 bikes a year, all custom, every one of them custom. I had 60 dealers in the United States. I think I had 65 guys working for me. The business had morphed into about 5 buildings, and life was good. We became, I think we became celebrities in the industry without even trying. It just kind of happened. And through the years, I became buddies with all these guys. We just got to hang out with these guys. For 10 years, I'm going to every home Giants game, sitting with Dusty's wife. You just got to be buddies. They're just normal people. And I think we treated it as such. We weren't starstruck. We would do events. We would do Laughlin. We would do Sturgis. And these guys, if they weren't playing ball, they'd come out and rep our product. They'd come out, sign autographs. They'd go out and do rides. It was a pretty phenomenal time then for us. And then life changes. Indian buys us out. A lot of big money. My partners were Murray Smith and John Albright from Canada. And when they approached me to build Indians, they were trying to get the trademark. This was in '98. They were trying to get the trademark. They figured they had to have the edge. There was 4 or 5 people bidding for the trademark. It was stuck in a receivership. There was a lot of legalities behind it. And John was the money guy. John Albright was the money guy. Murray was the brains. Murray was one of the smartest guys I've ever met in my life, just a marketing genius. And when they approached me, they hand me a business card that says, Indian Motorcycle of America, Toronto, Canada. And I'm looking at this business card, and I start, just exactly like you did, Brad, I start laughing. I said, well, that's an oxymoron. Yeah. How can we be Indian Motorcycles of America and we're based in Toronto? They said, well, this is what we did. We have a Class 13 license, whatever the hell that means. We're selling apparel. So they're like selling Indian branded jackets, vests, shirts, whatever, but not motorcycle stuff. It wouldn't be something that you and I would ride out on our bikes. It was fashion. And they were doing quite well with it. So they got a bug up their butt and said, hey, we want to build a motorcycle. Somehow they found me, and I built them some prototypes. They take them to the federal court in Colorado. The next thing I know, these guys put a big check in front of me and said, hey, we're buying your company. They hadn't got the trademark yet. They said, we're buying your company anyway. You got a viable company here. We were very profitable. And they made me an offer I couldn't refuse. And then it was about 6 months later, we actually got the brand. Then Coca-Cola came in. This is a story that I don't think a lot of people know. If you go out and kind of Google it or research it, Henry Schimberg and Summerfield Johnston, respectively, CEO, chairman of the board, Coca-Cola Enterprises, mainly the bottling company. You guys are big money. They were the ones that put I think it was about $40 million to obtain just the rights. So you're buying a piece of paper that says you own the brand. We didn't get a lot of assets with it. Then we had to go into manufacturing. I was already into manufacturing, but we're manufacturing basically a Softail Harley with an S&S engine in it. I had a partnership with S&S. They were supplying me motors, and we were building these custom bikes, cool bikes, horsepower bikes, and they still look like a Harley. So when I built the prototypes for the Canadian company, I put skirted fenders on a Softail. They showed me a picture of a bike with skirted fenders on a Softail. So that's what I did. And they take this thing to the court, and we get the trademark because we actually went with a motorcycle. One guy went with a wooden carving, another guy went with a drawing, another guy did a little 24 scale of what he was going to build, like what do they call them, the Franklin Mint models. That's what he brought in. This is what I'm going to build. Of course, it's a 1947 Franklin Mint. That's not where we at, the era we were in at that time. And the whole deal comes down very quickly Within 90 days, Murray was the CEO, I'm the president. Within 90 days, the Coca-Cola guys came in, they buy Murray out, Murray's gone. Now I'm the CEO and the president, and I'm not building bikes anymore. I'm traveling around the country raising money. We went out, I think in a year, raised about $250 million to get this project off the ground. Went from about 30,000 square feet that I owned manufacturing the CMCs to 200,000 square feet in a matter of about 9 months. Went from 65 employees to 250 employees. So the growth was astronomical, and it wasn't all good. There was a lot of growing pains. I'm fighting with the board because I want to build the bike. They need me because I'm the face of the company to go out and raise money. So it was kind of it was a tough struggle. So after about a year and a half of doing that, we ended up, I think we built 2,500 bikes, 1,100 the first year in '99, about 2,500 in 2000. They wanted to take this company public. I wanted to build a bike. I want to build my own engine. I want to build our own frame. I want to be unique. If we're going to really, really have this brand, I want to be unique. I don't want to be Harley. I don't want to put Indian clothes on a Harley. And the board was, these guys are money guys. Big business, big corporations. I wasn't used to that kind of business. And they were pushing me in a direction I didn't want to go. So I fought with them. Board meetings, I would sit there. I'm sure this is not a PG program here. So I'm sitting in a board meeting. I got my assistant, Francesca. Back then, she's taking handwritten minutes for the board meeting.
Right.
It was our very first board meeting. And I sat there for 2.5 hours, didn't say a word. Henry comes up to me and he says, "Ray, you're not saying much." I says, You guys are out of your minds. You're going to spend $13 million marketing 1,000 bikes. Are you crazy? I said, I don't know what you guys are trying to do, but we need to put that $13 million into building a real motorcycle. Well, you have a real motorcycle. I don't. We have a real motorcycle, but it's not a real Indian motorcycle. I want to build the Indian. So I would fight with him constantly. And I think it was the third or fourth meeting, same thing. I sat there, I'm listening to these guys. Bob Grayson, Tommy Hilfiger, he was going to do all the clothing. Frank O'Connell, he was Gibson greeting cards. They were the largest greeting card company, so he knew about marketing and stuff. So that's what's going to be his forte. And Frank was what do you want to call him? He wasn't a biker. He rode BMWs and he rode Honda Goldwings and stuff. He wasn't your atypical biker, but he rode motorcycles. So they brought him in thinking he was going to help me. I liked Frank. Frank and I got along well, but we had two different styles. I wanted to build something just the coolest bike ever, to go toe-to-toe with Harley. That was my ambition. And they wanted to build a company based on what we had built, take it public, and make a shitload of money. And to me, it wasn't about the money. It was about the product. It was about the legacy. It was about the brand. It took them a little while to convince me that this brand was real and that they were going to own it, And even when I sold my company, I wasn't sure. It wasn't until we actually were awarded that I got on board with it and said, okay, this is the direction we got to go. So for 2.5 years, I fight with these guys. Going into the third year, I basically gave them the finger and said, hey, look, I'm going to go build bikes, get somebody else to go. I did an interview in the New York Times in New York with Henry. And Henry don't know shit about shit. So he's talking about building a 45-degree, I don't know what he was talking about. And I just sat there and looked at him. So I kind of dominated the conversation, which sometimes I can do. And I set the record straight, set him straight. After the interview, the journalist that's doing the interview works for the New York Times. He says, Ray, where are we with this project? I said, we got a long ways to go. He says, how do you feel about the brand? I said, I love the brand. How do you feel about the motorcycle? I said, I'm not impressed. And I told him the story, Indian clothes on a Harley.
Yeah.
I says, we haven't lived up to the brand. I says, I'm not going to be satisfied until we do. Well, he printed it. I thought they were going to fire me. They'd never let me do an interview again. And I just said, hey, I told the truth.
This is the first one since then.
Yeah, pretty much, So anyway, I had a 5-year contract. There was only 2 of us that had employment contracts, and they got rid of Murray. So I had a 5-year contract with them. I'm fighting with them. They come in. Next thing you know, I'm in an 8-month audit with DLJ trying to get this company ready to go public. We're in beginning stages. I think we're February of 2001. So I think the numbers come back, and they were looking at something like 15 times earnings. That's what the Coca-Cola guys wanted. They come back at 5 or 6. I was happy with that because I was the 5th highest stockholder. I said, shoot, this is going to put a lot of zeros next to my stock, right? And they weren't happy with that. And they said, we're going to wait. Now we're into July, August. Okay, they said, we're going to hold off for a year, and then we think we'll go public next year. Well, everybody knows what happened on 9/11. It ruined the world. Ruined the United States, ruined the world, ruined the economy for a long time, ruined our chances of going public, and it just kind of soured the whole thing. So now, now we're at the end of 2001, going into 2002. I'm working on prototypes, and at the beginning of 2002, my father-in-law at the time had passed away, like a best friend to me, and 6 weeks later, my dad passed away. So I lose two of my best friends, basically in the same month, and it was a struggle to move forward. I took 90 days off, said, I'm gonna go get my head straight. They said, I had a big shop at my house, would you build prototypes? I said, yeah, so I built them some prototypes. I went back, my contract was coming up, and I negotiated with them for about 10 minutes and said, I'm out. You guys are going the wrong direction. I can't do this. I said, you want me to lie to my original dealers and tell them that, this Power Plus motor that they built, and they're using that name today. We built a Power Plus. It wasn't ready for production. It never got ready for production. They never did the testing, and they needed money. So they're shipping these things. Everything's FOB Gilroy. So the minute we send an invoice, we get paid. The banks pay us. And they needed the capital to keep the doors open, and I knew it. They wanted me to call all my dealers and tell them, yeah, order the bikes. They're good, they're good, they're good. Bikes weren't lasting 1,000 miles. The parts they used were inferior, and they suffered for it. And during that period, it took about 3 months for me to get my head out of my ass, I guess, and just tell them, hey, I can't do this. And like I said, it wasn't about the money. Last thing I told the board is, where you guys underestimated me, you're paying me all this money, I would have done it for free just to be part of it. And I walked out. And 14 months later, they went out of business. And that was the kind of the name of that tune. And it left me bitter. I did very well. I had rental properties that were keeping me alive. I really didn't need to work. Had 3 kids. The oldest was already in her 20s, and then I had a 13-year-old daughter, and maybe she was younger than that. I think my son was 7. My daughter was 10 or 11, and I just decided I was going to be a dad. And then in that period of being a dad, I ended up getting a divorce. And then I really became the dad. I became the single dad with a daughter going through puberty, and my son trying to figure out what I was doing or why I wasn't doing it anymore. And that kind of led to where we are here today. I ended up taking 10 years off. I didn't realize how much I missed the industry, missed my friends, missed a lot of the things we were doing. I did build some bikes. I had a big shop at my house, and I started golfing. Don't ask me why. Somebody got me into golfing. I started golfing. So I guess my personality was changing. Is somewhat. I wasn't focused on the. I'm gonna have a glass here.
Yeah, it's good wine. I know I said that, and it's not because they sponsored the episode, but
that's very good.
It's actually really good.
That's really
it's
good.
From Carmel Valley. It's really close by.
We'll finish this bottle.
Well, we got one open. You get to take that one home unless we crack that one too.
So I'm in the midst of going through a not a good divorce. I ended up with both my kids. That was a blessing. And I kind of was just golfing, taking care of my kids, and then they're getting older, and they're getting through it. And in the middle of this whole thing, I started having a relationship with my best friend, who happens to be my wife now. We didn't know it at the time. She had 3 daughters, and things just happened, and they happened for a reason. My prayer to God I didn't want to lose my family, and boy, did He bless me. I got 3 more daughters, because that's what I inherited. I got 3 more daughters, and they are my daughters. I was blessed. I got to walk the girls on their weddings and be part of that, and do the father-daughter dance, and there's nothing better. I mean, you'll get there someday, and
I have to hit puberty first.
There you go. and it's been a blessing. So my wife's family was in the business, car business, and my father-in-law's a brand guy. You name it, he owned it. Ford, Chevy, Dodge, Jeep, Hyundai, Nissan. He owned all the brands, and one of the brands that he owned is Honda. Motorcycles, everything Honda made except cars. He decides he's going to be a powerhouse in Hollister. Well, he's my golfing buddy by now. So we're golfing together, and I don't know that, we're going, this is 07. He opens the store, I think, in 06, 07, and by 08 it crashed, because the whole world crashed again. and we're golfing, and he wants me to help him with the Honda store. I said, I'm not a Honda guy. Got to help me. Not a Honda guy, but you know the business. I do know the business, but I'm not interested. So we argued in the golf course a few weeks, and finally my wife brings a statement home. She says, you got to help my dad. We're bleeding bad over there. Let me go look at it. So I went in for a couple of weeks. We go back to the club. We're going to have a martini and talk about it. And I says, give Honda the keys back. Can't make it work in Hollister. It's too small. The community's too small. We could increase your sales 5 times, and I still couldn't break even. I said, it's a loser, loser, loser. And he kind of explained some scenarios here. They own the property, and we're in this depression now, and got to keep this thing alive. I says, well, I know people in the industry. Let's bring some brands in. So that's kind of what we did. We brought Kawasaki. I bought the Kawasaki store down the street. A couple of the guys who worked for me at Indian went to work for Polaris. Well, I don't know it at the time. I mean, Polaris is building Victory. But I didn't know at the time they were in the works trying to buy the brand Indian. I didn't know that. Anyway, we bring Polaris in, and Arlen S. happened to be a good friend of mine, and Arlen was the Victory dealer here. He was the first Victory dealer in California. And I call Arlen. I said, hey, I got an opportunity to bring Victory, into the store here. He says, do it. Great bike, one of the best bikes. And Arlen had a lot to do with the styling, the vision, the cross country. That was all Arlen and Corey. Those guys were just phenomenal. And you're talking about, getting back to the beginning. I'm at an age, I'm in my 20s, and here's this guy, up in the Bay Area, in Dublin, building bikes, and these things are just out of this world. It's Arlen S. So, he's local enough, and I'd go to the show, go to the Roadster shows, and Arlen would be there, and the guy he was a prince of a man. You'd walk up to him, and, hey, Arlen, how you doing? He'd shake your hand, he'd give you an autograph, he'd talk to you, and that's how I got to know Arlen. And when I got into the business, there was some challenges that you have in business, especially trying to do custom stuff. Arlen was one of the first guys that reached out and gave me some insight, gave me some courage to do this, taught me some shortcuts. Then he introduced me to a lot of people. And then as we started doing these shows, I started meeting guys in the industry, Donnie Smith, Dave Perowitz, Ron Sims. You start meeting all these guys, and these guys are, way before your time, but they were the pioneers of the industry. And I'm right in the middle of it. You talk about being able to walk with giants. I'm at a time, I'm in my, going into my late 20s, and I get to walk with these giants, and to me, that's all it was. It was, being part of this motorcycle thing. I didn't care if I had enough money to buy lunch. I just wanted to build bikes. I just wanted to be around them. I wanted to ride them. So we started doing all the shows, and one thing leads to another, leads to another, leads to another, gets us through Indian. And while I was with Indian, I get inducted to the Motorcycle Hall of Fame in Sturgis. Rod Woodruff and I, Woody, were friends. We've been friends for years because we used to display out there at Sturgis. I was just out there last year with my son, or this year with my son, and that was our 5th time together out there, and there's nothing better.
You said that this is like the first time in 20 years that you'd been, right? Or
no. The last 5 years we've been, it had been, my son and I went out, I think it was in 2019, and I hadn't been out. The last time I was there when I got inducted. And I take that back. I was there in 2017 with my wife. Prior to that, I hadn't been there since 2001, being inducted into the Hall of Fame. And that was that 10-year period that, I was kind of in oblivion, if you will, and didn't have a lot of interest in it. But it wasn't until I got back into the business I realized how much I missed it. And then taking my wife back to Sturgis, it just that's what kind of opened everything up again to get back into doing the customs again. So when we brought Indian in, in 2013. First thing I did is I got my first shipment. I took one bike, took it in the back, tore it apart. Called my buddy Eric, who was the painter, and this guy is awesome. He's still my partner in the paint business. And I told him, paint this bike. He says, what do we want to do? I says, well, if Elvis was alive, I'd want this to be Elvis' bike. I want it rock and roll, man. I want this thing classic, nostalgic. I want it to be, if Elvis was alive today, this would be his bike. So he does this turquoise, pearl, teal, and cream with this gold Indian script. And the bike had tan leather bags with fringe on it. He killed it. He builds this bike, and immediately I just fall in love with the whole business again. And my sales manager, I got to tell this story, I've told it 100 times. My sales manager, Neil, he's a metric guy. Honda, Kawasaki, Ducati. I mean, that's him. He's one of those guys. He's not a Harley guy, not an Indian guy. So I had just recently taken the store over. I took the store over in 2011, and Neil and I are having this conversation. Well, I didn't tell him what I did. He's my sales manager. I bring the bike up after we got it done. It took us 2 weeks to get it all done. And I bring the bike up, put it on the showroom. It was on a Thursday, and we're having an open house on Saturday to kind of, show off Indian. And I wanted to have this bike done for that. And he looked at this thing, and he just, you'd have thought, that I stabbed his mother. He says, how in the fuck am I going to sell this bike? I says, Neil, you got to trust me. Saturday morning comes in, this big guy comes in, he's riding an old Harley, ape hangers and stuff, and I watched the guy ride in the front, park his bike. He walked through the door, I had that bike parked front and center. Nobody had even seen it. We just opened the doors. He knew we were having the open house, wanted to come and see the Indians. He walked in, said, there's my next bike, and he bought it. We get the deal done. About 20 minutes later, Neil comes and finds me and says, how fast can you do that again? How fast can we build another bike? So probably for the first 5 years, 80% of the bikes we built here were all custom painted. There was a time, an Indian, I think will admit this, my rep at the time, Tim Dawes, I had to work them pretty hard because Indian was struggling with their paint. When they couldn't keep up, and then the paint was suspect. I call it suspect because it just wasn't the caliber I was used to doing. And they only had 3 colors, red, blue, black. No stripes, no panels, no nothing. Red, blue, black with a decal on it. I said, man, we got to do better than this.
Yeah.
So they couldn't keep up. So I'm ordering 20, 30, 40 bikes at a time. I'm ordering truckloads of bikes coming in primered. I said, just don't put any paint on them. I'm going to paint every one of these. So I had crates in the back stacked up, and we were doing one-off customs, and I couldn't keep up. We're selling everything we can build. Some of them hit the magazines, and we started shipping kind of nationally all over the place. I mean, there's pictures in this place of bikes that we built that are all over the country. I've got to build, coming back into Indian, I mean, we're jumping all over the place here, but Indian comes into play, and it was kind of like the moment that I got to build Peter's bikes. At 13, that movie Easy Riders changed my life. 30 years later, I'm building bikes for Peter Fonda. I would have never dreamed that. And Peter and I got to be friends until he died. And it was kind of the same thing with Indian, owning the brand, and then it was almost 10 years had gone by. For me, it was, because I'm out of the business in 2002, they bring it back in 13. So yeah, it was about 10 years, 11 years, the brand comes back. And I'm starting to hear the rumors. And I had victory here. I had no intentions of getting Indian. One of the guys that worked for me was Mike Schell. He did sales for me. Mike calls me and says, hey, Ray, they want you to be the Indian dealer. I would have been I was the 3rd Indian dealer in California. So what do you mean? He says, yeah, they want you to, Steve Minetto wants you to sell Indians. I don't know who Steve Minetto is. They're going to fly you out to Australia, and you're going to see the bikes because they weren't legal to sell here, and the only place they had them was in Europe, and they had 10 of them in Australia. So it was kind of a dual purpose thing. We were with Polaris. We were going to we won some competition. They're sending my wife and I out a week to Sydney. We didn't know. We get there. I didn't know they were going to take us to this Indian dealership. Burt Monroe's son is doing a book signing. Didn't know that. All I know is they put us on a bus. We show a big Indian sign. We walk in. There's 10 of the most beautiful bikes I'd ever seen. They're the Indians. So there's about 50 dealers there. Monroe's son is signing books, and he's telling the stories and doing this whole seminar thing. And I'm laying underneath the bike. Everybody else is paying attention to Bert's son. I'm laying underneath the bike, and my wife's like, what are you doing? I said, I want to see what they did with this bike, because I wanted to hate it. I just wanted to hate it. All of a sudden, I feel somebody kicking my foot. I look up, and he looks at me, he goes, what are you doing? I said, I'm looking at the bike. He goes, well, who are you? I said, well, who are you? He goes, I'm Steve Minetto. I'm president of Indian Motorcycles. I said, well, I'm Rey Sotelo. I was the president. He sticks his hand down, pulls me up, and he goes, well, I've been waiting to meet you. And that started a really, really, really good relationship. Him and I got to be very good friends. We had many meetings, had many dinners together. And I think in the first 2 years, he was just picking my brain. He wanted to see everything, where we screwed up so he didn't make the same mistakes. And then I got to pick the bike apart. And then I remember the first dinner I had with him, Bennett Morgan was CEO of Polaris. We were in Sydney. And we're talking, and we're just kind of reflecting. And I said, I wanted to hate the brand. I wanted to hate the bike. Haven't owned it is bittersweet. I said, but man, I'm really proud at this moment that our failure led to your success because you built the bike. And to me,
a follow-up question I had, I can imagine after the experience that you had with Indian coming in, buying California motorcycles, and the experience that you had could have left a sour taste when it comes to the brand, but from what I can see, you love Indian, and Indian
took me about 30 seconds to get over it. After inspecting the bike for about 30 seconds, I found one flaw. I pointed it out to Steve. They fixed it the next year. And then within 2 years, I'm building bikes for Indian. They were building 3 bikes. Then they decide, well, the matte thing was in, so they're going to do a matte black, call it a dark horse. Well, they just sent me the Chieftain matte black. And the marketing guy, Robert Pandia, calls me and he says, Ray, you need to do something with this bike. What do you mean? You got 6 weeks. We're going to do an unveiling of the dark horse. Nobody's even seen it, because when they sent it, it didn't even have the Indian packaging on it. So I get this bike. And I said, what are my parameters? Got to stay matte black, but you can pretty much, can I cut the fender, front fender? Yeah. Can I do this? Can I do that? So I ended up having Eric paint it. I put a 21-inch wheel on it instead of the 16. I cut the original big skirted fender. I cut it down and made it look custom, left the war bonnet on it. Changed the bars. I think I had Corbin make a seat for me. Mike Corbin's right down the street, and him and I have been buddies for over 40 years. So I called Michael up and said, come and look at this bike. I need something. He says, get it done, bring it, I'll do it. So he did. So we get the bike done, and they had 30 bikes down in Long Beach, and you're familiar with that, USS Iowa with the gun turrets and everything, right there in Long Beach. So that's where the press release was going to be. So basically, they wanted me to get in front of all the cameras and the journalists and stuff and say, hey, you could customize these bikes, and this is how we're going to do it. And this is what I did, and maybe the garage mechanic can do it, he can do the majority of it, but this is kind of what's going on with this thing. So we're down there, 30 bikes, 4 of them on the deck of the USS Iowa. 3 of them are the stock bikes, 1 of them's our bike. And for whatever reason, Robert named this thing the Redeemer. I don't know if it was Redeeming Indian, Redeeming Rey Sotelo, I don't know. This was like a comeback for me, and I was fortunate I had my daughter and my wife with me, and we do this whole press release. Well, Joe's my manager in the service department. Joe's been with me for over 30 years, and I took Joe with me because he was instrumental in helping me build this bike. And they put 30 journalists on the bikes. They put Joe on our bike. They rode from Long Beach to Monterey to do the quail gathering at the quail, where they do every eclectic brand motorcycle you'll see it at the quail. Very high end event. Indian had a big display, and there was our bike, and they unveiled our bike, and that was in 2015. 2016, the Dark Horse came out. Small fender, 19-inch wheel. So they took my bike, and so
people like that. Let's do that again.
Yeah. So then in 2017, I got to build the Chieftain, and we ended up winning. It was a worldwide competition, and we ended up winning. They took the bike to Daytona. I took my crew down there, and we won some money, and the bike got sold, and we sold the bike, and it was a pretty good honor. I built Scout for them. Folds of Honor. You're in the military, you know all about the Folds of Honor. Last year, we were chosen to customize the bike, and it was ironic that the young man that I'm talking to is probably about your age, and he says, Ray, he goes, I just got this passion, this dream. He goes, we're going to send you the bike. I said, what is it? Springfield. Well, Springfield's more of a cruiser, bagger cruiser,
Classic styling.
Yeah, classic styling, big fender, the cowling instead of the fairing, a windshield, kind of old school, 50s. He sends me a picture of the Captain America bike. He has no idea that I built these for Peter. And I'm looking at the bike. I call Eric up. I'm looking at the picture. I call Eric up, and we're both laughing. I called him. His name was Cole. I said, Cole, I can't put this paint job on this bike. I said, I can do something. I said, you need patriotic? He starts explaining what the bike was all about.
Yeah.
He says, yeah. I said, okay. So Eric and I had a conversation, and Eric says, I got an idea. I says, go, just run. So he does. So the bike had 50 stars on it. It had stripes on it. It was red, white, and blue. It was Captain America. It was G.I. Joe. It was Wonder Woman. Anything patriotic that you could see, Eric brought it out. I mean, in the font on the tank that said Indian, that was G.I. Joe. Yeah. All of us as kids played with G.I. Joe. You'd be surprised, guys my age are going, G.I. Joe. They saw that, and they picked it out. Well, this bike was representative of what America is, and we put our spin on it. And I was very blessed that we were chosen to build the bike, and they gave it away last year. And I'm at Sturgis my son and I were in Sturgis doing the unveiling. And there's a whole crowd there, and we're doing interviews and stuff, and people are talking to me. We built the bike, and corporates there telling them why they chose us to do this, because I had prior experience with them building bikes, and of course my history with Indian. And this guy walks up, and he's kind of like Brad Miller with a pole and the what do you call it, the camera?
The 360 camera.
The 360 camera. And he's standing there, and he finds me, and he goes, "Are you Ray?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "You built this bike?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, I'm Fred." I said, "Okay." He goes, "I'm winning the bike." I said, "Okay." He goes, "And when I get done with it," he goes, "I got a plan." I says, "Okay." He goes, we start talking. He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "I'm going to win the bike." He goes, "And then I'm going to take it." He says, "I already got a spot reserved at the Mecum auction in January." I says, "Okay." He's talking. I'm just listening. He says, "And I'm going to take the bike there." He says, "And I'm going to win it," because it was all the IMRGs had to go out and they had to get pledges, and the guy that raised the most money won the bike, and he was leading. I didn't know that. And this is a national, worldwide, I don't know what it was, but it was a big deal. I think it was all 50 states. He already reserved a spot. He's determined he's going to win the bike. And he's telling me I'm going to win the bike. And when I do, he says, "You and your painter," I says, "Eric," he says, "Yeah, you're going to come out and we're going to give this bike back. And they're going to auction it off, and however much money we raise, we're giving it to the charity." I said, "Well, man, that's cool." He goes, "But I got a favor." I said, "What's that?" He goes, "Well, I'm real tight with Davidson Audio. We're giving some guys, some of my buddies, some plugs here. They're awesome. Davidson Audio are just awesome, especially with with the Indians. They're one of the few that do Indian audio upgrades." And he wanted to put lower fairings on the crash bar speakers, and he wanted to incorporate that, and he wanted us to paint it. I said, "Freddie, you win the bike. You send me whatever you want. I'll paint it. No charge. We're going to do this." September 3rd, he calls me. It was Labor Day, I think. He calls me and he says, "Ray, I won the bike." I says, "No kidding." He goes, "Yep." He goes, "We're already there. I'm sending you the parts." So we got to get these parts done. We put the those audio lids on the back for the saddlebags and the lowers. And this bike cranked with audio. So Eric and I go out. We go out to Las Vegas. We happen to be with Pat Murphy. He's the demo driver. He's been my demo driver with Victory and Indian for the last 15, 16 years. And we don't know what to expect. And everybody, they got the bike set up, and there's a lot of hype. People are looking, talking about this bike. Everybody's kind of flipping out. The bike goes through. As the bikes are going through, the owners never get to tell about it. They got somebody talking about the bike. It's this, it's that, it's this, it's that. They called Fred up, and they had Fred tell his story. The bike rolls, and I think they ended up selling for about 60 grand. The guy's in the audience that's buying the bike. He's military, current, I believe. And it was just the coolest thing to be part of. That we got to build a bike, they gave it back, this guy buys it, and the money goes back to the charity. It was just the coolest thing to be part of. So coming full circle from owning the brand to kind of walking out on the company saying, "I'm done, I can't do this anymore," to getting back into it, and then having a relationship with Indian. Who could dream that? Who could dream that? It's pretty cool stuff.
So before we get into our final segment, I want to talk about tattoos. They're a big part of motorcycle culture. I know you have a few pieces yourself. Do you have a favorite piece? Do you have any pieces with crazy stories behind them?
Yeah, everybody, I'm the Indian guy. I'm in the business. Everybody knows me now. I mean, my early career, with South County motorcycles and then California motorcycles, it was all about the customs and Harleys and stuff like that. Now I'm the Indian guy, and everybody assumes, that I have the Indian tattoos. I don't. I don't have any Indian tattoos. I have a Harley tattoo. That was my very first tattoo I got when I was 16. I still have it. Proud of it. It's having the tattoo and being part of Harley and watching Harley's demise in the early days provided a great living for me and a great career. I laugh. I said both my knees are shot from kicking them damn Sportsters and Shovelheads, because it was just a shitty design, and now my knees are paying the price. But getting back to tattoos, it wasn't a motorcycle thing for me. The Harley tattoo was. I got the barn shield on my shoulder. It was just about I think every tattoo that you get should be something special. It should have meaning. You know what I mean? So the ones that have the most meaning are the ones with my kids. You know, I got one with my son, I got one, one with my daughters, and I got one with my mom. And those are very special. And then I have other ones with special meanings. I got a tribute to one of my buddies that passed away, and they all have a special meaning. I'm a Leo. I got this lion here, and I got the gal, my wife, kind of holding me back on the chain because I can
was
get.
Was that her idea or was that your idea?
I knew better. I knew myself better, Dad. I said this is going to have to, this is real. And getting to relationships, you got to have a great partner, and I have the best.
Absolutely.
And that leads to the tattoos. My son's rides an Indian. He's got an Indian tattoo. All my daughters have tattoos, and every one of them has a special meaning. And I think tattoos have a place. It used to be very taboo. I can tell you a real quick story. I started golfing. So you imagine me, in a golf shirt and golf shorts, and then my shit hanging out. I mean, I got sleeves, and I'm on the golf course and I'm watching these yuckety yucks, John Chambers from Cisco, they're out there on the driver. I don't know who these guys are. Guys are big money, corporate guys, IT guys or whatever. I just want to golf. And I'm sitting on the driving range and I'm hitting the balls, and our bartender in our club, I knew his dad real well, and Alfredo, I walk in, I'm hitting balls, I get done, I go in there, I'm gonna go have a beer, and he says, hey, the guys really, want to know what's going on here. What do you mean? He says, they're not sure they want you part of this club. I was, fuck them, I ain't going anywhere. I've been there for 25 years, and now they're used to the tattoos, and even the guys are getting them. But tattoos are special, they have to have meaning. They do go hand in hand with motorcycles, but I think the tattoos have a broader personality, and I think it's kind of to each his own. And my mother would always tell me, don't ever judge a book by its cover, and she was a school teacher, and I took that to heart, So sometimes I'll tell you, the tattoos break the ice. I see somebody with a tattoo, you got something in common.
Absolutely.
Recently a guy, he was over at Corbin's, he's getting his seat made. I walked right up to him, bald-headed like me. He had like hair, tattooed. And I walked up, I said, I just got to know. And he kind of looked at me, kind of a gruff looking guy, kind of looked at me, he goes, what? I said, how bad did that hurt? He went, oh my God, you have no idea. I said, I often thought about it, but you just cured me. I ain't doing it.
That's always been one. I have a lot of pieces myself in that. Every time I see someone with their head
oh
done,
my God.
I'm like, oh God, I can't
oh my
imagine.
God, I couldn't even imagine.
Yeah.
I had to ask him.
Yeah.
I had to ask him. You know what I mean?
Personal research.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
Before we wrap this ride up, I want to slow it down for a second for a final pour. You've been leading the resurgence of the Hollister Independence Rally and kind of working to bring back the soul of the custom motorcycle scene in California. As you look back now, what stands out the most to you?
Hollister's history, I mean, in this city, I wish just would, they brought it back this year. It was gone for a long time. Mike Corbin's it's Mike Hannigan. Corbin is his AKA, okay? And you ask Corbin, he'll tell you that story. I know Michael's last name, he's Hannigan. He's always been Mikey to me. He's my buddy, he's my friend. When I'm building, I'm taking orders, okay? So I got orders I got to go into this story real quick. I got an order for 30 bikes, and back then each seat was costing me $150, okay? I don't have that kind of money to put out up front to get my seats done. So I went over to Mike, I said, look, I got purchase orders here. I said, I need these, because he was building onesie twosies for me. Now I put an order in for 30, and I can't remember how much money it was. I said, but this, I'll get paid. The minute I got them done, I'll get paid. He says, you want me to build the seats? I said, yeah. He stuck his hand out. He says, you gonna pay me? I said, yeah. Shook his hand. That was 40 years ago. That's the same deal Michael and I have today. When he needs something, all he has to do is ask. And when I need something, it goes both ways. And Michael's been my dear friend. Michael has been an inspiration in bringing this rally back. His business has been here for 27, 28 years now here in Hollister. We've had some great rallies. I started bringing it back in 1982, 1983. We were out at Bellotto Park. They would never let us do it downtown. So we started doing a poker run, did it for 10 years. And the last one, we had about 5,000, 8,000 people show up. Freddie Fender, you're talking about building bikes. I built a bike for Freddie Fender. And I knew of Freddie Fender, and I'll tell a funny story. He walks up, my dad's sitting there helping me on a Saturday. Freddie walks up, he's shooting a movie here. Well, I knew him, bigger, heavy guy with the afro, right? He walks up, short hair, thin, tells my dad, he shakes his hand, he says, "Hi, I'm Freddie Fender. I need a carburetor." I'm in the back working. My dad comes back and he says, "Hey, Freddie Fender's out there, needs a carburetor." I says, "Yeah, I'm Johnny Cash, let me help him." So I walk out, he sticks his hand out, "I'm Freddie Fender." I says, "Yeah, I'm Johnny Cash, what can I do for you?" He starts laughing. He needed a linker carburetor for his knucklehead. I said, "Yeah, come in the back, I got a box of these things." And just, I don't know what, I gave it to him. Here you go. 2 weeks later, somebody called me, there's tickets for the Mountain Winery Texas Tornadoes. I don't know who the hell the Texas Tornadoes are. Okay, this must be real. We go, and sure as shit, it's Freddie Fender. Well, this was back in, 1990 or something, and him and I just remained friends till his death. And I probably built him 3 or 4 bikes and motors, panhead motors, knucklehead motors. And you get to meet people like that. And where the hell were we going? I lost track here.
What stands out to you the most?
It's those experiences, being able to build the bike for the end consumer and seeing his face, seeing his expression. We'll do another episode here if we may, but the roles will be reversed here because we're building a bike for you right now.
Yeah.
I want to get when we show you the bike, I want to be able to video it. Some of the people that have come in here brought me to tears. Tribute bikes. Somebody had passed. They're doing it in memory of. We get to do these things, and they're just very, very special.
We've got one of those back there right now.
We
that
do.
One that has the ribbon on it with the initials.
Yep.
It's just a beautiful bike.
Yep. And there's a whole. I can go into another hour story on that one. That's a pretty special bike.
Yeah.
But these are the things that we live for. It's not about how many times your cash register rings. It's about creating something. Leaving a lasting impression, if you will. You're asking me the importance of my tattoos and stuff like that. For me now in this point in time in my life, it's about giving back. I've been blessed. My family's been blessed. My kids are blessed. For me right now, the biggest thing in my life is my wife, my partner, Angela, and what we bring to the table with our 6 kids. And we have 6, and we have 3 grandkids. To me, that's everything. Being the dad, to me, I think that's what I was born to do. That's what my dad instilled in me. And then giving back. We do a lot of things for the community as a family, as a Greenwood family here, as the Indian motorcycle family. We're vested into this community here. And the rally, God, it's just history. 47, Brando, the so-called riot here. I had a very close friend of mine, just happened to be a Hell's Angel in Kent, England. His name was Maz Harris. He was the only Hell's Angel to date since the inception of this club worldwide that had a doctorate degree. Guy was a doctor of philosophy. He wrote a book, okay? And that was his thesis. I have it. It's signed by Maz Harris. It's a treasure for me. And a big part of that book was written about Hollister and the history and the bikers coming here and what happened, and then how Hollywood sensationalized it with Lee Marvin and Marlon Brando, and then where we are today, and why the city hasn't embraced that as part of our history, like what Sturgis does, and Daytona and Laconia, all these events that are built around motorcycle lifestyle. I don't want to call it biker lifestyle, it's motorcycle lifestyle. It's everybody included. And Corbin and I, back in, I started doing them for 10 years. Mike jumped on with me, and one of our biggest proponents, the guy that was leading the charge, Sonny Barger. Sonny and I go back, 40 years till he died. I met Sonny when he was with his second wife, and I worked on Sharon's bike, Noel's bike, and I'm still working on Z's bike. I got both of Sonny's bikes here now in my shop. I'm honored that Z chose me to house his motorcycles. Those are part of his legacy, and I'm proud to be part of that. I am, and I don't talk about it a lot. I'm honored that they. How do I want to say this? That they trusted me enough, that I was a trusted enough friend that they brought his bikes here for me to display and let anybody see. And Z's thing is they're in her garage. Every time she looks at them, she's thinking about Sonny, and she just breaks down. So I had to go get them out of her garage. They've been here for 3 years now. Sonny's been gone. And Sonny and I were buddies. I met him in my 20s. And I didn't go bragging around, hey, I know Sonny Barger. You just, in this motorcycle culture, if you know anything about motorcycle clubs, and there are clubs, you don't do that. I've got very good friends in a lot of different clubs. I got very good friends still in the Hells Angels. Maz Harris was one of them. And guy was a well-educated guy. The coolest thing is I have to find the picture of him, my mom, the school teacher, him, a professor at Oxford, having tea at my mom's house. Anytime he came in from London, he had to have tea with my mom. Coolest thing ever. That just doesn't happen in this world, and it happened to me. And these are the things that are important. Bringing this rally back is ultra important. It needs to be part of Hollister's history. One of the reasons this store is here, one of the reasons I'm here. And Michael and I are working our butts off. We tried to do it in 97. We ended up bringing it back in 97. Sonny led the charge, and it went on for about 10 years, and then the city council changed, and the sheriff and the chief of police, and a lot of things going on in the world and club business and all that kind of stuff. And I think they let it interfere with what was really important, and it's the history and the heritage. Can't let that go. You just can't, And I have people every week coming in. They have to come to Hollister because it's where it all began. And there's really nothing for them to see other than this store and Mike's store. Yeah. And Mike's got a whole nother story that he could tell about that, and we're still proponents. We still want to make it happen. I think Mike and I in our older days here, we partnered on a lot of ventures. One of the ventures we partnered on is the Hope Motorcycle Rally. We raise money and awareness for prostate and ovarian cancer. My mom died of ovarian cancer. I'm a prostate cancer survivor. Thank God I caught it early. Had I not been associated with a friend of mine that had stage 4, I don't know if I'd be here, because most of us are dumbasses, and as we get to a certain age, you got to take care of yourself, and I was unaware. And until my friend Dave, brought me into this thing, and I started this charity with him, I started getting tested. After the 6th year, I became positive with prostate cancer. I was pre-stage 1, caught it early, eradicated it. I'm, going into 3.5 years now. My PSA level's under, it's 0.2 or something. It's phenomenal. Like, probably what yours is now. That's where I'm at. And I thank Dave, and I thank God for being a part of that. And to me, my wife has made a comment, and she will verify this. I wish you would work as hard on the business and everything else as you do in this charity. I says the charity gives me a lot more gratification. We were just at an event this weekend. Went up and saw, they had a big poker run, and guys are buying tickets. We're giving 2 motorcycles away. Indian Motorcycle has donated one of the bikes. The other one is Dave's personal bike that his family donated. We've been blessed. And getting to do this, to me, that was ultra important. Yeah, I could be here selling bikes, but to me, that was more important. And donating my time, helping people. You have no idea the women, the wives that have come up to me and said, thank you. Because my husband got involved in this event, came to the event, listened to you guys talk, he went and got checked. And thank God he did. He was stage 3, or he was, he's, having issues, and we're dummies, without our wives pushing us, and that's when we brought the ovarian cancer in, because we brought the women in to help stimulate this thing. And right now our ticket sales are up for our charity dinner up there about 40% over last year. My goal was everybody bring somebody next year, and they are. We got people coming from Colorado, Arizona, San Diego, all the state of California. We got some people coming from Oregon and Washington. So this is becoming a national event. I think Indian is recognizing us as a force to be reckoned with. The Golden Nugget up in Lake Tahoe, they've partnered with us. There's a picture I can give you if you want to. We're on the marquee, Hope Motorcycle Rally on the marquee in Lake Tahoe, front and center, all day long until the event. They've been running this thing, it'll run 30 days. That's the kind of support we're getting. So for me, had I not been involved in this whole motorcycle thing, I wouldn't have led me to where I am today. I'm grateful, thankful, blessed. I just want to keep doing it. My wife, we have a conversation every year. Well, when's enough going to be enough? Till I'm done. I'm not done yet. My kids ask me the same thing. I'm going to be 70 years old next year. I'm still riding my bike. I went to Sturgis with my son again this year. We're already signed up. We're going again next year. This will be an annual event as long as I can keep doing it. And that was the question. A question I asked him. We got back. We've been back a week. I says, "You in?" let's do it. I said, all right, we're done. For me, that's what it's all about. I got 2 of my girls to go with me. 2 of my daughters went. I want to get the rest of them to go and experience this thing and to be part of the whole community there. It's a great community. This motorcycle community that we're part of, unless you've been part of it, you wouldn't know. And it's hard to explain. You see the t-shirts, if I have to explain, you wouldn't understand. That's the truth. If I had to explain this, I'm doing the best I can until you experience it, until you become part of the community, until you become part of the brotherhood. There's guys out there that you see and you just shake their hand, and the next thing you know, you're buddies. My son's godfather, I met him at a run, God, over 40 years ago. Let's see, my oldest daughter's 45 years old, so it was 46 years ago. I meet Danny, and it was a chance meeting in Laughlin, Nevada. Not Laughlin, Henderson, Hawthorne, Nevada. That's where the old Laughlin started. El Capitan. There was just one casino. We'd all ride and we'd sleep in the park. And I meet Danny there. They call him Red Rider, big red beard, looked like Santa Claus. And him and I've been brothers ever since. And when my son was born, he had to be the godfather. And that's this lifestyle. That's the community. And I don't know what else. I don't know what else there is to say about it, but if you're not involved, get involved.
I think it was misrepresented for a long time and misunderstood probably for even longer. And
well, you have the media sensationalizing, the gang violence and club violence and all that stuff. I've known both sides of it, and I kind of steer clear of the violence part of it. I don't need it. As far as the brotherhood part of it, with the Hells Angels or any of the other clubs here, I've always been supportive of these guys. They've always been very supportive of me. And being in this business, you're going to run across these guys. And I'm making friends, not enemies. And that's just what I do. I guess that's my rule of thumb. I'd rather make friends than enemies. Your friends are going to be with you a long time. Your enemies are going to try to eliminate you. So that's where we're at today. But I want the stigma to, is there stigmas? Yeah, there's stigmas around everything. Anything, everything, you name it. Pick a topic, there's going to be a stigma on both sides. Motorcyclists do more good than bad. That's my philosophy, and I'm calling anybody out that disagrees with me. They do more good than bad.
Absolutely. How do you define success now? Has it changed since 80s, 90s, early thousands?
When you chase the dollar and you think that's success, you'll hopefully learn at an earlier age than later that it's not about chasing the dollar. It's not even about the dollar. I have young guys. I'll tell a story about one of my son's best friends, Carlo. He does all my powder coating. Young guy, in his early 30s, got 2 kids now. And when Carlo got into the business, he was buying the business. And my advice to him was, are you passionate about this? Yes. And he was a machinist by trade. He used to calibrate machines. The guy made really good money. I said, be careful turning your passion into a job. I said, because if your passion becomes a job, then you're going to lose the passion for it. So I've always stayed passionate about it. Success seemed to have followed. I've always done a good job. I've always had plenty of money and resources. I've invested my money well, I think, and it's allowed me a lifestyle. I mean, I don't live beyond my means. I'm raising my kids to not live beyond their means. Success to me, I did a eulogy when my dad died, and the crowd that was out at the cemetery blew me away. And my dad was not wealthy. We weren't wealthy. We were very lower, class, middle class, if you will, back then. My dad drove a forklift for the paper company. My mom worked in the cannery until she put herself through school and got her teaching credentials. We had enough, and that's what my parents taught me. Know enough is enough. You don't need more. You need enough. That's all you need. And I'm doing this eulogy, and I didn't prepare. Today I didn't prepare. You kind of told me what we were doing. You said, I want to interview and ask questions, and that's kind of what I did. I didn't want to study and have this thing. I wanted it to come off natural and real, and this is my analogy about success. I'm looking at the crowd, and a lot of it was family, and there's Hell's Angels out in the audience because they love my dad. My dad did not ride motorcycles, wasn't part of the motorcycle community. My dad was supporting me. Everybody thought it was his business and I worked for him. It was my business. He was on my payroll. Okay, so that's setting the record straight, but I didn't care. He was there. The last 17 of his years, I got to spend almost every day with him. The first part of my growing up, probably till I was 35, I never saw my dad. He worked 2 jobs. So getting back to my eulogy here, I looked out at the diverse crowd, friends, family, all all the inner circles, all of his friends, all of my friends, all my motorcycles. They gave him the Hells Angels led a procession for my dad. How cool is that, right? For me, I thought, man. So I'm looking out at my real short speech. I says, you know, you can judge a man's wealth by the amount of money he has in the bank. I says, but I judge a man's wealth by the friends he has. I said, look at this. I said, my dad was the richest man in the world. That's how I deem success, you know. So it's a cool thing. I go to Sturgis every year, and I might not see that guy for a whole year. And when I walk in and I see my buddies that are in this industry with me, and I can call them on the phone at any time. And then when I get to go see them, it's like, you know, a minute hasn't passed. They're your buddies for life. Yeah. That's success.
I wanted to revisit something you said earlier. When I first moved here, I'm not from California, I'm not from Hollister, but I've been riding Indians for a long time, and didn't know anything about the dealership, about Hollister, about you, and just happened to ride out here and walked in, and you were the first person that I talked to, and you just gave me a handshake and said, "What are you doing?" I was like, I just moved here. And you're like, "Well, welcome to the family." And I was like, that's crazy. And I soon came to learn who you were and your role in not just Indian motorcycles, but motorcycles in general and California motorcycles. And you said earlier that when you met Arlen Ness, that he was a prince of a man and that it was like walking with giants. And to me, this is the coolest thing that I've done in a long time, because this is walking with giants for me. And a lot of people say the same thing. When I was at the Hollister rally here, I was fortunate enough to talk to a lot of people that have known you for a long time. We got to see one of those Fonda motorcycles that pulled up, and I had no idea that you made it.
That was cool. Yeah,
and
that
I
was cool.
Like, that's the coolest motorcycle I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And they were like, "Well, Ray built that." I was like, "What?"
Yeah.
And I saw all the promotions that were going on with the Springfield that went to Meekum, and saw it on the wall, and I was like, "Yeah, that was so cool that Indian did that."
Yeah.
And JT, one of the salesmen here, was like, "Oh, Ray did that." Yeah. I was like, "That is just the coolest thing for me to be able to come here, to meet you, to talk to you, and become friends with you. Has been amazing." If you could say one thing to the next generation of riders or builders, what would it be?
Stay involved. Just stay involved. To me, the past has always defined the future. I don't want to live in the past. I've had a great past. I want to keep defining the future for you, for Chaz. You know, I mean, Chaz comes in, he walks in. I don't know who this man is. I get to meet him. Turns out he went to school with my son. My son calls me, "Hey," he was already here. My friend Chaz is coming to get a bike. I said, "He's here." You know, to me, that's just the coolest thing ever. And then it just becomes family. You know, and we want to welcome everybody here. This is what the business to me is all about. And we get a lot of compliments. You know, we try to do everything right. Sometimes you don't, but you do your very best. The community here, if I could pass anything on to you guys, you know, getting into this, is have influence on everybody around you. Make them understand. If they're asking and they want an opinion, make them understand. If they're just asking just to ask, don't waste your time, right? If they really want to know, then explain it to them. Why you got involved, why you're here, what am I doing? I mean, what you're doing with your bike, the average guy wouldn't do it. You know, you're sitting there looking, you're seeing, I see your bike, every time I see it, something's changing. You know, and then it came to where, okay, you've gone as far as you can do. It's still the gray Sport Chief. Well, we got to cool it up. He didn't even take his bike till we cooled his bike up, right?
That's a smart move.
First thing we did is he never even rode it. You want to ride it? No, tear it apart. This is how I want it, and that's what we did. Now, you know, now he's cool king out there. He's got the only one like that. That's, to me, is what it's about. Pass that on. Pass that on. The younger generation needs to get it. They need to get what we're doing, and they need to be part of it. You guys get it. Not all of your generation's getting it, because we're finding out that the guys like me are timing out. The guys we're selling the big bikes to are timing out. You know, you guys are graduating. You brought your buddy in to buy the Challenger, and all of a sudden I see something in your eyes. It's in your future now. I can see that.
I know. I told him I'm going to need to get another one.
You're married now. You got a wife. She's going to want the Cadillac seat. You know, and that's the way it is, right? You know, and so pass that on, because I'm in fear that we're going to lose that enthusiasm. I've had a great run, and it's all the guys that are my age and older. I'm watching a lot of my buddies pass that were instrumental in getting me to where I'm at. it's important to keep it going. I'm blessed. My son, he rides Indians with me. How cool is that? And he golfs with me. How cool is that? My daughters all ride on the bike with me. They all love the motorcycle thing. You know, my wife. That's just cool. Make it a family thing. You know, it's not a bad thing. This is a great thing. You know, make it part of your family, make it part of your core. It's not what defines you, you know. We used to call them the sidewalk commandos. You know, the guy would be a lawyer during the week, then on the weekend he'd have the jeans on and the vest and the patches and the chains and shit, and you're going, you know, just be who you are. You know, don't try to be somebody you're not, you know, and if that's the stigma, you know what I mean, be that guy. You know, if that's who you are, just be that guy. Don't try to be somebody you're not, you know, and to me, it was always a cool thing to be part of, you know what I mean, or to be associated with. You know, now everybody knows me. They know I'm into motorcycles. Well, now my wife says, you're burning all your friends out. I said, how so? She goes, well, all you want to talk about is getting tested for prostate cancer and going. I said, well, we're all at that age. I don't want to lose any more of my buddies.
They already have motorcycles.
They already got motorcycles. Now I got to keep them around so they can
Yeah.
ride with me, right? You know, so that's kind of what it is. So if I could say the one thing, that's what it is. Spread it. Spread the word. And what you guys are doing here today, hopefully it does spread the word.
Yeah.
You know?
It's rare to talk to somebody that you can truly say has had such a monumental impact on a culture, even just an item, just the progression that you've moved this industry with Indian motorcycles and motorcycles in general is incredible. You already have a huge legacy. What do you want your legacy to be? Is it the Hope Rally and the charity? Is it Indian motorcycles? Is it something different? Golf lover, wine lover?
Yeah, no, I mean, you know, I think, you know, as you go through life, your values change. It's what you're chasing and what you're trying to be, you know, and I think I got to a point, you know, when I got into big corporate business, it burned me out. You know, I loved the intimacy of this business that we have now. When I went into corporate, I still kept all my friends, but we had to go a different direction. Then you got to perform, and then you got investors, you know, and that kind of consumes you. It was an education I wouldn't change. I would do it again. There's things I would try to do differently, but I don't think I could. But it was definitely an education, but it did burn me out. I want to stay focused, and through that whole transition and getting into, you know, when I got into my 50s is when I realized the most important thing for me, and if I want to leave a legacy, is, man, I was a good dad. You know, I tried to do the best and set the best example for my kids. And I've not done everything right. And I've got a past, just like, you know, there's skeletons out there, and I've not denied it. And I've talked with my kids about it, and they all know who I am and where I come from, and they know who I am today. And that's my legacy, you know, is just keep trying to be the best guy I can be, try to help whoever I can help, you know, lend a hand. I'm in the grocery store the other day. I'm a pretty, you know, assuming guy. I mean, I'm 6'3", I got tattoos, I'm bald-headed, you know, got the beard and stuff, and you're walking in there, and when an 80-year-old woman walks up to you with an 80-year-old man with a cane, and I'm in the grocery store, I'm getting around buying stuff to go to Sturgis. I'm packing up the motorhome we're going to stay in, you know, when we get out there with our stuff. And this woman walks up to me, and she says, "Young man," I says, "Oh my God, I love this woman. I need your help." And I'm looking, and on this planet, that doesn't happen. Yeah. People judge you, right? And she said that to me. She wanted me to reach something down because her husband couldn't reach it. It was the last one, and he had to have it. It was some kind of drink or something. Of course, I come and I helped her. She came and, "Can I give you a big hug?" She goes, "People are just not nice anymore." She goes, "I don't know why I thought you were a nice person." I said, "Well, I am a nice person." I said, "And you are too." Gave me a hug, and that's kind of what it's all about, right? That's who you need to be, you know. So that would be my thing to pass on, you know. And I want my kids to keep passing on what I'm doing. It's a family affair this year at the Hope. I've got four out of the 6 kids are going to make it. I've got 3 of my nieces that are going to be there, my nephews, all my friends, you know, everybody at this Hope Rally has become my friend. But now it's a family affair. You know, now everybody wants to support. I got people involved in what I'm doing, and I really think they're supporting the charity and not me. And if they support me and it goes to the charity, it's all good. But I want them to support this thing. You know, I'm happy I'm part of this legacy, but it's not what defines me. It's just being part of something really, really cool. Being part of something really, really good. Gets me out of bed every morning. You know, next week I got another event I got to go do. You know, and I'm happy to go do it.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, I think that's a great place to wrap up. So the microphone is yours. What are you working on right now? What's next for you? Any announcements? You got this camera, that camera, this camera?
We got, you know, Hope Rally the end of the month. If this gets released, that'd be great. If not, hey, you know what? Next year, get involved. HopeMotorcycleRally.org. Family time. Trying to spend as much time with my family. I need to do a better job of that. I get consumed with my life, motorcycles. Motorcycle guy, Hope Rally, you know, sometimes you got your priorities screwed up, and right now I'm focused on my family, spending time with my family. As I said, I'll be 70 years old next year. I want to try to spend as much time with my friends and family as I can, because the older you get, the faster it goes, and I'm trying to just make time. I think time is the most important thing we have. Don't waste it. Make it count. If I could tell anybody, especially you guys, what you guys are doing here today just touches me. It was special when you asked me to do this. You and I were having a conversation. I did a podcast a couple of years ago. I sent it to my daughters. My daughters are just hammering me. And I told them what we were doing today, and they're texting me right now. How's it going? How's it going? You know, and I think this is just cool. More of this needs to happen. What you two guys are doing here. Thank you. God bless you guys for doing this. Keep this whole thing alive, and hopefully it brings you guys some satisfaction or some recognition, because these are not your regular jobs. I know that, but you're damn good at it. So maybe there's a future in that direction.
Yeah,
who the
we'll
hell
see.
knows, right?
Yeah.
Who the
Chaz
hell
and I
knows?
moving together.
Goddamn camera's working.
Yeah.
I got the duct tape over here.
Hey, whatever it takes, man. Whatever it takes.
All right. Well, that's it for this ride. Huge thanks to Ray for taking time to share stories with us today. Follow him at Indian Motorcycle of Hollister and Hollister Power Sports. They're both linked in the bio. And be sure to check out the Hope Rally. It may have happened before this episode airs, but it happens
Always
every
next year. Always next year.
Until next time, ride safe, drink slow, and we'll see you in the next episode of Throttles and Bottles.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers, everybody.
Mine's empty, but that's all
This is
right.
good wine.
It is. It's great wine. Yeah, I love it. That's it for this ride. Huge thanks to Ray for sharing stories with us today. Follow him at Indian Motorcycle of Hollister and Hollister Power Sports. Be sure to check out the Hope Rally. Until next time, ride safe, drink slow, and we'll see you on the next episode of Throttles and Bottles. Thank you to the sponsors of today's episode. Without them, we wouldn't be able to do this, and we look forward to having more.